What's the scariest thing that ever happened to you that you can't explain? When I first bought the old Victorian house at the edge of town, I was enchanted. Its creaking wooden floors, the faint smell of aged cedar, and the intricate moldings on the ceilings seemed charming rather than eerie. I had always wanted a place with history, a house that held stories, and this one promised that. I moved in during early autumn, when the wind carried the crisp scent of fallen leaves, and I was excited to start my new life. The first few nights were uneventful. I unpacked boxes, arranged furniture, and explored every room, imagining the countless families that must have lived there before me. The house had a personality. It groaned and whispered as if settling into its new occupant. I told myself these were normal noises. Old houses creak, doors expand, floors contract, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't entirely alone. The whispers began subtly. At first, I thought I was imagining them, tiny sibilant murmurs carried down the wind through cracked windows or vents. They were incoherent, just fragments of sound, fleeting and impossible to pin down. I would pause while unpacking and strain my ears, but the noise would vanish, leaving only silence. I tried to rationalize it, maybe the heating system, maybe the wind, but deep down, I knew this was something else. After a week, the whispers became clearer, more deliberate. They didn't come from the walls or the vents, but seemed to echo through the hallways, following me from room to room. I would be cooking in the kitchen, and a soft voice would hiss just behind me. "Don't open it." I would spin around, heart pounding, but no one was there. I tried to record the sound on my phone, but each time, the device captured nothing but static. I began to research the house's history. Local records showed that it had belonged to the Blackwood family, wealthy and reclusive, in the late 1800s. Rumors spoke of strange occurrences, unexplained deaths, and disappearances. I dismissed them as town gossip, but a creeping unease settled over me. The more I learned, the more the whispers seemed to react. I would read about a tragic event in the library, and the whispers would mimic a sobbing voice, so real I would jump from the sofa. One night, the whispers became voices. Clear, distinct, and unmistakable. I was lying in bed when I heard a soft, urgent chant, "Get out. Leave now." My bedroom door slammed shut on its own, rattling the frame. I tried to convince myself it was the wind, a falling shutter, or my imagination, but the pattern was undeniable. Each night, they grew louder, forming sentences, sometimes begging for help, sometimes warning me. My sleep became fractured, and exhaustion set in. I started noticing other signs. Items moved slightly, chairs turned toward walls, photographs tilted. I would wait to find doors I left locked now standing ajar. Cold drafts swept through hallways, and shadows flickered at the edge of my vision. Once, I saw a figure in the hallway mirror, tall, dark, motionless. I blinked, and it vanished. The whispers seemed to guide me, always toward areas of the house I hadn't explored, leading me to the attic. The attic was a chamber of forgotten relics. Old furniture draped in white sheets, trunks filled with yellowed letters, and a dusty diary left by one of the Blackwoods. The whispers were relentless here, urgent and almost pleading. I opened the diary and discovered entries that recounted daily life, then escalated into paranoia and fear. The last entries spoke of voices in the walls, shadows moving without light, and a terrible secret hidden beneath the house. Compelled, I investigated the basement next. The stairs creaked under my weight, the air thick with mildew and unease. I followed the whispers to a concealed trapdoor. Beneath it was a small, windowless chamber. Inside, old artifacts, ritualistic symbols etched into the floor, and a chilling presence that made my skin crawl. The whispers surrounded me, layered and insistent. They didn't leave. They never left. The air was icy, and my breath fogged. A shadow moved across the chamber, circling me, too fast and indistinct to identify, yet undeniably there. I fled the house that night and stayed at a friend's apartment for several days, trying to make sense of what had happened. Rational explanations failed. Thermal drafts, creaking floors, or imagination couldn't account for the voices, the moving objects, or the oppressive sense of being watched. When I returned with equipment, cameras, audio recorders, the activity intensified. The devices captured nothing, yet the sensation of presence, the whispers, and the shadows grew stronger. Weeks passed, and the house felt alive. It was aware, snatchy and almost responding to my movements, my thoughts, my fears. The whispers evolved into conversations, taunting, guiding, warning, and screaming in unison. Sleep became impossible, reality blurred. Friends came to visit, and they felt it too. Cold spots, sudden anxiety, glimpses of movement of the corner of their eyes. Eventually, I realized that the house was not just haunted, it was hungry for acknowledgement. It wanted to be remembered, to have its history known, to ensure its occupants never ignored it. I began documenting everything, writing down whispers, drawing maps, cataloging every anomaly. It became an obsession, a necessary ritual to survive. Even now, years later, the house waits. I left, but it has left a mark on me that cannot be erased. I hear whispers in the silence, shadows moving in corners I cannot see, and an unshakable certainty that what I experienced was not imagination. It was real. And I know, somehow, that one day, I will return and the house will be waiting, too. It began as an ordinary night. I went to bed, exhausted from work, expecting nothing more than the usual restless sleep I had grown accustomed to over the years. But that night, my dreams were different. The dream was hyper-real, as if I had been transported into another dimension layered over my own reality. Every detail was precise. The feel of the cold tile beneath my feet, the smell of damp earth, the faint metallic tang of something I couldn't immediately identify. In the dream, I was walking through my apartment. It was identical in every way to my real home, yet slightly altered. Familiar objects were shifted, shadows were deeper, and the air had a weight, oppressive and suffocating. I heard noises, subtle at first. Whispers behind closed doors, footsteps echoing on the stairs, and soft taps against the walls. I tried to ignore them, but an instinctive dread grew, making my heart pound and my palms sweat. The dream escalated. I saw a figure in the corner of the living room, shrouded in darkness, barely visible. It seemed to be watching me, its presence both heavy and threatening. I called out, but no sound came from my lips. Panic rose as I realized I was moving in slow motion, unable to flee. The figure stretched toward me, an appendage, or perhaps a shadow, merging with a dim light, and suddenly the scene shifted. I woke up with a start, drenched in sweat, convinced it had been a dream. But as I stood and moved through my apartment, I noticed subtle, horrifying details. The small rug in the corner was displaced, a chair I had left near the window was now facing the center of the room, and faint scratches appeared on the wooden floorboards. My blood ran cold. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I had sleepwalked, but the scratches were fresh, and the chair was impossibly moved without my knowledge. That night, I went to bed again, trying to suppress any hope for rest. The dream returned, in near-perfect replication. Every detail was the same, yet somehow more intense. The shadowed figure approached, whispers grew louder, and a voice spoke directly in my mind. "You can't escape. This is not the end." I jolted awake, and once more, the apartment had changed. Slightly curtains drawn differently, objects slightly altered, a faint cold draft lingering in the air. Over the next several days, the line between dream and reality blurred. Each night, the dream repeated, growing in complexity, and each morning, subtle changes manifested in my apartment. I began documenting the differences, noting the patterns, the figure's position, the sequence of events, the whispers. I became obsessed, unable to leave my apartment, fearing what would happen if I were away during the night. Friends noticed my absence, the shadows under my eyes, my erratic behavior. They came to check on me, but even they began to sense the unnaturalness in the apartment. Cold spots, fleeting glimpses of movement, whispers that seemed to react to our conversation, they all felt it. I realized this was not merely a recurring dream. The dream was a conduit, a bridge between dimensions, or perhaps a premonition of something terrible. One night, the dream changed. The figure spoke clearly, its voice unmistakable. "You've seen too much. You know what's coming." In the dream, doors opened to reveal corridors that didn't exist in my real apartment, hallways filled with symbols etched in blood, and windows that looked out onto landscapes that should not exist. I tried to wake, to shake free, but the figure reached out, and for the first time, I felt a physical touch, icy and bone deep. I woke screaming. This time, my body bore the evidence of the dream's intrusion. Scratches on my arms, the smell of damp earth in the air, and a faint metallic taste in my mouth confirmed that I had crossed some boundary. Panic consumed me. I barricaded doors, covered mirrors, and tried rituals I had read about online to ward off spirits or dimensional breaches. Nothing worked. The figure, the whispers, the changes, they persisted, relentless and growing stronger each night. Eventually, I understood that sleep was no longer safe. Every night, the dream reached further, influencing reality, reshaping my apartment, and eroding my sanity. Friends left, fearing for me. I became isolated, obsessed with surviving each night, documenting every anomaly, and attempting to anticipate the figure's actions. Each night became a game of endurance, where failure could mean something far worse than death, being consumed, replaced, or trapped forever within the dream. Months passed. The figure began to communicate directly with my reflection in mirrors, the windows, even in photographs. Whispers echoed in empty rooms, warning me of events yet to occur, guiding or manipulating me. I realized the dream had become a predator, an entity feeding on my fear, using reality as a canvas for its malevolence. My own mind was no longer a sanctuary. It had become a trap. I still live in the apartment, though I rarely sleep. Lights remain on at night, windows covered, mirrors draped. I record everything, hoping for proof, for understanding, but nothing can fully capture the terror. The line between dream and reality is permanently blurred. And sometimes, in the quietest hours of the night, I hear it, the soft, insistent whisper reminding me, it's not over. It never ends. Tree. It started innocuously enough. I had always been aware that my neighbor, Mr. Holloway, was eccentric. He kept odd hours, rarely interacted with anyone, and his house had an air of neglect, as if it were decaying in slow motion. Children whispered about the strange noises that emanated at night, and even adults avoided his yard. But none of us ever suspected what lay beneath a seemingly ordinary home. One evening, I noticed his front door ajar. He had never left it unlocked before. Concerned, I approached, calling out his name, but received no response. The air felt different, thicker, colder, and heavy with a faint, metallic odor. I tried to peer through the windows, but darkness swallowed the interior. Something urged me to investigate further, curiosity overpowering caution. I found a side door leading to the basement. Normally padlocked, it now hung open. Descending the stairs, my flashlight barely cut through the oppressive darkness. The smell intensified. Damp earth, mold, and something foul, decaying, yet unmistakably alive. Shadows danced across the walls, elongated and contorted, as if the house itself were breathing. Every instinct screamed for me to turn back, but a compulsion I couldn't explain drove me forward. The basement was larger than it should have been, almost impossibly so, with walls that seemed to shift, elongate, and contract as I moved. Strange symbols were etched into the floor in a substance I couldn't identify, dark, viscous, and glistening under my flashlight. At first, I thought they were painted, but a closer inspection revealed movement, subtle writhing patterns that made my stomach churn. The air pulsed, and I felt a heartbeat, not mine, but something else's. Then I saw it. A figure, curved into a corner, completely motionless at first. It resembled a human, but its proportions were wrong. Limbs elongated, joints twisted, eyes too large, reflecting the light with unnatural clarity. I froze. It moved slowly, raising its head, and I felt its gaze pierce me. Panic surged, and I stumbled back, tripping over a pile of old furniture. The figure didn't move further, but the sense of awareness, of sneerance, was overwhelming. Exploration revealed more. Cavities in the walls contained jars with indistinct shapes floating in liquid, some resembling distorted human forms, some animal, all horrifyingly alive. The symbols on the floor pulsed faintly, as if feeding the dark presence in the corner. Whispers began, soft and almost unintelligible at first, then clearer. You shouldn't be here. Leave, or join us. The voice was not singular but layered, multiple tones overlapping, forming an oppressive, disorienting chant. I attempted to flee, but discovered the basement had changed. Hallways extended impossibly, doors that had been locked were now open, stairways leading to nowhere. I realized I was trapped in a labyrinth, not bound by physical constraints, but by something aware, a conscious intelligence manipulating space itself. Fear consumed me, and yet I was compelled to continue, as if some part of me wanted to confront whatever resided here. Hours or perhaps minutes passed. Time felt distorted. I encountered more figures, some partially hidden, others fully visible, all watching. One approached, its elongated limbs gliding across the floor with unnatural grace. It stopped a few feet away, head cocked, observing. A cold realization hit me. These beings were not merely alive, they were aware, intelligent, and predatory. They could sense my thoughts, my fear, and my panic. Desperation drove me to try communicating. Who were you? I stammered. The whispering crescended into a chorus of voices, overlapping, incomprehensible, yet somehow I understood. We were never gone. This is our domain. You trespassed. You belong now. The air became thick, each breath a labor, as the figures slowly closed in. I felt my consciousness tugged, stretched, as if the house itself were attempting to assimilate me. In a burst of adrenaline, I ran blindly through the shifting hallways, following the dim light of my flashlight. Doors led to basements beneath basements, stairways descending impossibly, and each corner revealed new horrors, figures contorted in pain, faces frozen in eternal scream, shadows moving independently of their sources. I felt the house respond to my fear, each heartbeat echoing in its walls, every thought mirrored by unseen entities. Finally, I stumbled upon a trapdoor leading outside. Bursting into the cold night air, I collapsed on the lawn, gasping, shivering, and disoriented. The house loomed silently behind me, normal from the outside, as if nothing had occurred. But I knew it was a falsity. Mr. Holloway was gone, vanished without a trace. Only the house remained, alive, hungry, and waiting for the next trespasser. Since that night, I have never stepped inside again. I avoid the street altogether, warning anyone who will listen. Some call me paranoid, others skeptical, but I know the truth. That house is not just a building, it is a predator, patient, intelligent, and malevolent. It waits, breathing through the walls, whispering through the cracks, manipulating space and time, and it will not rest until it claims another soul. Even now, when I walk past, I feel its awareness, a cold pressure against my back, the subtle shift of shadows. And I know, without a doubt, that it remembers me. It watches. It waits. And one day, I fear, it will reach out again. 4. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly. I first noticed it during quiet evenings when the apartment was still, the hum of electricity low and the city's distant noises fading. A faint murmur seemed to rise from the walls, soft, barely audible, like the fluttering of 1,000 tiny voices. I assumed it was the building settling, the pipes shifting, or my imagination playing tricks after long hours of work. But it persisted, growing stronger each night. At first, I tried to ignore it. I would sit at my desk, reading or writing, and the whispers would ebb and flow, like wind through leaves, always just at the edge of perception. But soon, patterns emerged. The murmurs were not random. They seemed to form words, fragments of sentences, pleading, warning, or commanding. I strained to hear, but the voices would retreat whenever I tried to focus, teasing me with incomprehensible fragments. Curiosity became obsession. I began recording the sounds at night, placing microphones in different corners of the apartment. Playback revealed only faint static and unrecognizable noises. Yet, when I listened in real time, the voices were clear, distinct, and insistent. They spoke of events that had occurred in the building decades ago, tragedies long forgotten, people who had vanished, and secrets buried beneath the floorboards. Sleep became impossible. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing the whispers as if they were right beside me. Sometimes, they called my name, soft and drawn out, impossibly close. I tried talking back, asking questions, demanding silence, but the murmurs only grew louder, more urgent, and more coherent. I began to feel their presence behind walls, in corners, crawling along the ceiling and floors, watching, waiting, pressing against the boundaries of my perception. One night, the whispers escalated into voices. I awoke to a chorus, overlapping and chaotic, chanting in a language I did not recognize, yet somehow understood. The temperature dropped sharply. My breath fogged in the cold air. The walls seemed to pulse, as if the apartment itself were alive, responding to the voices in my fear. Shadows moved in corners, flickering unnaturally, defying the sources of light. I realized that this was no ordinary haunting. Whatever was speaking through the walls was conscious, aware, and intentionally trying to interact. I discovered a trapdoor in the kitchen, previously hidden under a loose tile. The whispers guided me toward it, insistent and demanding. Hesitation gave way to curiosity and dread. I opened the door and descended into a narrow crawl space beneath the apartment. The air was thick, musty, filled with the scent of damp earth and decay. Carved symbols lined the walls, ancient and indecipherable, glowing faintly under the beam of my flashlight. The whispers were deafening here, urging me deeper into the crawl space, toward a chamber that should not have existed. The chamber revealed the source, a hollow beneath the building, filled with remnants of lives long lost. Dolls, toys, letters, and personal belongings arranged as if worshipped. The air vibrated with the whispers of countless trapped souls, each voice distinct, layered, and intelligible. They recounted their deaths, betrayals, and unfinished business. Some begged for release, others demanded vengeance. The realization struck me. The building was a conduit, a prison, and a predator, feeding on despair and fear, using the walls to communicate, manipulate, and control those who entered. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, gaunt man, indistinct, his face obscured by darkness. He spoke without moving his lips, the voice echoing through the walls, in my mind, and across every sense. "You hear us. You see what you were meant to ignore. Now you belong." Panic surged. I tried to flee, but the walls seemed to shift, elongating corridors, closing exits, disorienting me. The whispers became a symphony of madness, each voice tugging at my mind, attempting to dissolve my sense of reality, blending past, present, and memory into one unending terror. I awoke in my bed, soaked in sweat, heart hammering, the sunlight barely piercing the drawn curtains. But the whispers remained. They followed me throughout the day, faint but persistent, reminding me that the apartment had claimed a part of me, tethering my consciousness to its hidden horrors. Every creak of the floor, every flicker of shadow, every hum of electricity carried their presence, reminding me that the building was alive, aware, and eternal. I moved out, but the apartment stayed with me. Dreams filled with the chamber, the trapped voices, the gaunt figure, haunted my nights. Sometimes I hear faint murmurs through phone calls, recordings, or even in empty rooms, as if the building's influence reached across distance. Friends noticed my obsession, my paranoia, and my inability to be alone. They asked me to let go, to forget, but I cannot. The whispers are a part of me now, intertwined with my consciousness, persistent and relentless, a reminder that some places are alive in ways humans are never meant to understand. Even now, when I walk past buildings of a similar age, I feel the walls watching, listening, waiting. The whispers follow, patient, enduring, persistent. I know I will never escape them. The apartment claimed me in ways that no one else can see or understand. And the whispers continue, insistent, eternal, promising that I will hear them forever.